Sunday edition of the Call Up. I'm Aram Layton. He's Jack McMullen. And basically, we'll try to give the lay of the land here because we have a lot of things to discuss. Well, first of all, we're going to discuss Paul Skenes versus Rhett Lowder, College World Series, which we also had a really electric game one of the College World Series, but we got to discuss what was arguably the most electric pitching matchup maybe ever. So we'll talk about those two, where they fit into the MLB draft and what you can expect there. Nick Gonzalez promoted, which is really cool because I got to see him on the Cape in 19, and then you just got to see him up close and personal for this whole season with the Pirates. Gavin Williams called up as well with the Guardians. That's extremely exciting. Really excited to kind of break that down and talk about how, maybe he may have some implications if he pitches well on the Guardians rotation. And of course, to explain why we are posting an episode on Sunday and random times and whatever, I'm in London for the London series. I've been up till like 2, 3 in the morning trying to watch these college games. I was not going to bed in that Lowder Skenes start, Jack. There was no way. But there was definitely one or two other things we're even supposed to hit on now as well that I forgot. I don't know if there was anything else.
Yeah, there was a trade. Eduardo Escobar went to
Dang.
the Angels for Coleman Crow and Landon Marceau. So just an idea of like who those guys are. And Cade Horton continues to generate buzz.
Yep.
So I think we're going to hit Cade Horton too. Yeah. But I was like, you texted me the next morning, I guess. And I saw you like almost tweeting and texting through this end of the Lowder Skenes game. And I was like, what are you doing? You were like, I took a couple hour nap. I was like, yeah, what time were you up till last night? 4.
Yeah.
Why? I was watching Lowder and Skenes. Why? So like, there's a replay feature on ESPN, right?
Dude, I could not go to sleep. I couldn't go to sleep knowing those two were actively throwing on the other side of the world somewhere. It's funny because sometimes I can still shut it down. I'm like, all right, like let's go to bed and we'll catch up in the morning. I can even click through every single pitch and watch every single pitch. But there was something about these two, man. There's something about a baseball game where both half innings you're pumped. When it's just Skenes, you're like, okay, I love watching him pitch in the top of the innings, and then on the bottom half of the innings, well, I'm watching Cruz, and hopefully it gets around to the bats in LSU's lineup that are really fun to watch: Trey Morgan, Tommy White, whatever it may be. But what was so captivating about this start, aside from the fact that it was a game to go to the College World Series final, was that when Lowder's throwing, I'm intrigued. I'm looking at a top 10 prospect, a top 10 pick in this upcoming draft. When Skenes is throwing, I'm looking at the best prospect pitching wise and probably the number 2 overall pick in the draft. So there was just this level of intrigue that you don't often get. And honestly, I would say, because we were discussing this before we clicked record on this, there was something about, I knew how good Lowder was, but I don't know if I fully appreciated Lowder to the degree that I did by watching him on that stage in that start, because it wasn't just what he did to a very good LSU lineup. It was what he did to a very good and balanced LSU lineup. He faced 25 batters. He faced 11 lefties. He faced 14 righties. And this is a guy that the whole arsenal, there's so many different ways that he can come after you. And it was really impressive. And I felt like we could really appreciate that. You want to start with Lowder with Wake Forest, because Paul Skenes, I think it's very well documented. We're going to talk about him, but with Lowder, this guy might have made himself a little bit more money with one start. And I always think that that's a little silly to buy into, but I think in this outing, if I'm the Cincinnati Reds looking at pick number 7, and I'm either taking Kyle Teel. This is what I would do if I'm the Reds at 7. Kyle Teel, Rhett Lowder. Those are the two guys I think at the top of my board, unless somebody else falls to me. I'm looking at Rhett Lowder and saying, okay, my window is to win by next year or the year after that. Obviously, they're looking at winning now too. And I'm thinking Lowder can get there real quick.
Yeah, I think so too. I think what we saw from Lowder is very similar to a standout performance in the NCAA tournament. Where a guy just NCAA men's basketball tournament, I should say.
This technically is the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, this is too, but like
not the tournament.
NCAA men's basketball tournament.
Yeah.
I think that he had one of those draft elevators that is so awesome. Like we see guys that are, like, hey, Brandon Miller is a consensus top 5 guy, but he shows out in the NCAA men's basketball tournament for a little bit, and he becomes the 2 when the number 2 overall pick was set in stone for the last 3 years, apparently, in Scoot Henderson. Like, it just happens at the very last moment. And I think that's kind of what we saw from Lowder. I think we could have seen it from Kyle Teal if Virginia wasn't 2 and out. But what was so impressive about Lowder is he was given truly a once in a lifetime opportunity, a once in your baseball career opportunity. You have the chance to match the best pitching prospect since Steven Strasburg.
Yeah.
How do you fare? And there are so many guys that can't do it. There are so many guys that have a little blip in the radar and they lose that game 2-0. The fact that they went to the 11th scoreless is such a testament to Rhett Lowder. From a stuff perspective, mid-90s heater, really, really good changeup. And I love the depth on the curveball. I love the separation between mid-90s and a low 80s slider. I think that this guy's pitch mix can play very quickly. I think his arm slot is weird, much like Sheehan. It's going to take some time for hitters to figure it out. And I thought that this was for lack of a better term, I thought this was as big of a dick on the table start as we saw in college baseball this year.
I think you hit all of the important points there. It really was not only an impressive start from just a stuff standpoint, where I believe it was 13 swinging strikes, and it's a mixture of everything. I mean, he got several with the fastball, several with the slider, several with the changeup. It was really impressive to see him mix everything up and get whiffs. But how about the efficiency? Because this was an interesting wrinkle in it. Paul Skenes went 8 innings, 2 hits, no runs, 1 walk, 9 Ks. Rhett Lowder went 7 innings, 3 hits. You had 2 walks, 6 Ks, also no earned runs. But here's the important wrinkle. Lowder and Wake Forest is a very forward-thinking, and not to say LSU isn't, but we know Wake's kind of, and when it comes to college, somewhat pioneers with the pitching lab, which they talked about way too much during the series, but it is an important point with the way
First
that they approach.
Baby, now it's Wake.
Yeah. With the way they approach pitching too, though, the amount of guys, it's not a coincidence how many dudes that were, maybe not top 100 perfect game recruits that end up going to Wake Forest and becoming legitimate pitching prospects and getting drafted quite high. They also have a specific way that they go about things, which is we're not throwing our starting pitcher over 100 pitches. Rhett Lowder has only thrown over 100 pitches once, 100 pitches twice this year, and over 100 once, which is 105 at Pittsburgh. So Lowder knew that he was going to need to be as efficient as possible. Whereas Skenes, he knew that they were going to kind of ride him as far as he could go. And I think he ended up throwing 120 something pitches, not taking anything away from Skenes because he's just bully ball, overpower you. But Lowder also had this balance of having to be as efficient as possible. And I think he could have almost got to 8 innings there. He was so efficient through the first 5 or 6 innings. And then, third time through, I think LSU started to spit on a couple more borderline pitches, started to foul off a couple more, and then they were able to wear him down a bit. But before we get to Skenes, that was the number one thing for me was you had the efficiency of Lowder while mixing in several different pitches. If you're an MLB team at this point, is there an arm that you're putting ahead of Lowder after Skenes? Basically, is there anyone else you could say is number 2? That Dollander fell very flat in this post. I know what he has ability-wise. I know what he has stuff-wise. But can you really justify anybody other than Lowder as the number 2 arm taken here?
You can, just because of the arm talent with Dollander. I think that each pitch in a vacuum can look like they're MLB ready for Dollander. But at the end of the day, Lowder had a sub-2 in the ACC, and Dollander had close to a 5 in the SEC this year. Yeah. And results do matter in that regard. I notice all the best pitching prospects, all the top 10 picks as college arms had good ERAs.
Yeah. Well, and then people will point towards the Bryce Millers and those guys are, college stats aren't the end all be all.
Whatever, but Bryce Miller wasn't a top 10 pick.
Correct. That's where I draw the line. If it's late first, early second, I agree. Look between the margins, look at the data. But when you're taking
Reggie Crawford.
Yeah. Love that pick. But when I agree with you. When you're taking an arm in the top 10 picks, he better dominate.
I want a dude that's going to be there fucking tomorrow. I
Yeah.
want a rocker or a lighter. And obviously those two haven't worked out well at all, but like that's the kind of college arm that I want. I want a guy like Paul Skenes, who I know, like, hey, in a pinch, this guy can be my back end reliever if I'm making a wild card push in September.
Yeah.
Garrett Crochet, I thought was a good pick in that regard for the White Sox. If he went through the normal maturation process as a starting pitcher, I think Garrett Crochet was going to be a consensus top 100 pitcher in base or prospect in baseball.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he was thrusted into a unique situation. I'm looking at a guy in the top 10 in Skenes, in Lowder, in a Hurston Waldrop that, like, if they do need to get up really quickly, they can, and they're not going to implode. Dolander had, starts of somewhat implosion in college. And I don't think that's a mark of a top 2 pitcher in the class. I think Lowder just proved that he is the clear-cut 2. But if there's any argument for anybody, it's the arm talent and the pitch arsenal of Dolander.
That's fair. And I guess it could go into like signing bonuses and what all that looks like. But I'd feel really comfortable taking a Lowder because I think he checks the boxes of what we were talking about too. Like, yeah, you were hoping rocker lighter would be that super, super safe guy. There's something about the pitchability of Lowder with the whole arsenal that I think is different than even some of the more maybe exciting or higher upside pitching prospects we've seen. Like Rhett Lowder just screams big league 3 to me. Obviously there could be more than that. And I think there's definitely a chance for that, but I just feel really confident that this guy's going to be a big league 3. And if you can get a big league 3 in a top 10 pick, you're doing that every day of the week.
You know what everybody wants is Reed Detmers. Everybody wants Detmers. And Detmers was the 10th overall pick.
Yeah. I think that's exactly what, and I think he's better than Detmers. Like, I think he could be better than Detmers. I think he's more talented. We'll see if it all kind of comes together, but I agree. I think you're looking for that Reed Detmers, which is exactly who we could promise you the Angels were looking for, that fast track arm that they could bring up. Let's get to Skenes and let's see if we can discuss Skenes in a way that, hasn't been discussed, ad nauseum a little bit. And of course he's discussed ad nauseum because I don't know if there really is any nauseum with him because he's so fun. Again, 8 innings of 0 runs, 2 hits, 9 Ks, 1 walk. It really felt like for LSU, the plan was just ride your best arm and find a way to get a run eventually. And that's exactly what happened. Props to Thatcher Hurd, who came in, and he's going to be a good arm as well in some capacity. Thatcher Hurd came in and was effective. I know he didn't have the best year in the world, but he's got good stuff. Hurd went 3 innings of scoreless ball as well. But Paul Skenes, man, it was ridiculous to just see, one, how effortless the velocity is. He hit 100 by the ballpark radar gun 16 times, which is silly. He hit 101 as well, and really never got below 98 miles per hour on the fastball. I think he threw 1 fastball 97 miles per hour in the 3rd inning. Everything else, I mean, we're looking at the 8th inning, over 100 pitches in, 98, 98, 98, 98. It's pretty remarkable to see that. But then also you had that slider working where it was just disgusting. And the craziest part was there weren't a lot that got away from him. And I think that's what stood out to me, because this isn't a finesse pitcher. This is a power pitcher by definition. He is a power pitcher, but he was ripping sliders with a good feel for it. And he threw some good changeups.
Got a good changeup. I think he's got a really good changeup. And I think that's the separator. And like, this is my take that I debuted on the Just Baseball show, and I'll bring it here. I don't see many immediate differences between Paul Skenes and Hunter Greene right now, because Hunter Greene still has questions about the fastball shape, right? Like there are still some, reddish flags. I'll call them pink flags that pop up about Hunter Greene. Yes, it's 100, but is it dead zone? Like that's the question about Skenes, right? Okay, It's 100. You have to see the data. Like it's just unknown with Skenes' fastball, but the slider is unhittable at the college level, and the changeup is better than Greene's, and the command is there. Obviously, the massive difference between Paul Skenes and Hunter Greene is Hunter Greene has had 4 or 5 years at the professional level to hone in on mastering his pitchability, mastering his, command. Like, he's not going to miss spots. Skenes has gotten away with missing spots all year long because he's facing college bats. Like, the SEC is probably the equivalent to somewhere between low A and high A.
Yeah, I would say.
So,
and probably a lot of the time low A.
But dude, like, if you're dominating low A with these numbers at 21 years old, I mean, you're a top 10 prospect in the game. Like, if for some reason a GM did not bump this guy and he spent, and he spent 15 starts in low A and he was doing this, he's a top 10 prospect in baseball. So that's my thing, man. Like, I just don't see any glaring differences between Skenes and Hunter Green. And I think you make a perfect point. Obviously, the most impressive thing about Skenes is the fastball and the average velocity, the number of times that he hits 100. But I think for me, the most impressive wrinkle to that most impressive pitch is the sustained velocity. We saw it in the regional. 123rd pitch of the game was 101, 102. I mean, like, he's got that left in the tank.
Yeah.
How the hell does a human being have that left in the tank?
It's like that Air Force. You see the Air Force still in him, I feel like, on the mound, where they talk about how hard of a worker he is and how much he can, like, really push his body when he's working out and practicing and when he's on the mound. We talk about pitch clock and guys that have adjusted. Like, Paul Skenes would not be impacted by that whatsoever. You could tell he's kind of put himself through his own tests before he gets on the mound every single time, and that's why you get consistent performance from him. The craziest part too is you talk about, like, the numbers. If this was like low A adjacent or whatever you want to call it, even if it was rookie ball, what he was doing is insane. He had double-digit strikeouts for, I think, 12 of his 17 starts. Most of them were 12, 13 Ks. Ironically, that performance of 8 shutout against Wake Forest was one of 5 starts this year where he didn't have 10 Ks. That is just absurd. He's 6'6", 250, but with little wasted weight. It's a strong 6'6", 250. He moves really well. He was a two-way player, a good hitter at Air Force, which I love to see from pitchers, because that means usually these guys have a good feel for their body and places that, maybe some pitchers don't have as much balance. And it just shows the athleticism. So this is a big ass dude who's athletic, like linebacker type, right? This is not like D-line. This is a linebacker. Like, he moves way too well for a guy of his size. That's why he's such a good pitching prospect. It's not just the 100 and the nasty slider and the feel for the change. It's the body. It's the sustainability. And the biggest thing is, when I was out in Omaha and I got to watch Kumar Rocker throw, of course, he was really, really impressive. But my biggest concern was, we got to the 5th inning, got to the 6th inning, it was hot as hell. It was hot as hell, like when Skenes was throwing too. And you just saw the mechanics break down. You saw some non-competitive pitches, and you saw him working hard. That's okay. He's a human being. But again, when we're talking about this generational pitching prospect, which some thought Rocker may be, that was one of those moments where I saw some human to him. Paul Skenes, there was no human to him in that entire start. There was no human to him in the 1st inning. There was no human in the 8th inning. It was just beyond me what we were seeing. And that's why I think all of the ridiculous hype around him, and there's a lot of variables and things go awry oftentimes. I hope they don't. But all of those things that have been thrown Paul Skenes' way are absolutely valid for that reason.
Yeah. There's also nothing to break down. Like, mechanically, there's nothing to deteriorate over the course of a start on a hot day. What does he do that, like, he needs to put max effort in? You mentioned it's low effort velo. I'm just looking at, like, point A to point B to point C to like release.
Yeah.
There's nothing happening there. It's so clean and minimalist. It's perfect. Like, he's the perfect pitching prospect.
Yeah. Just about, which is really exciting. So we'll see. I mean, I don't think anybody's ruling out a shakeup at 1. I think it would be nuts watching Dylan Cruz in this series. I know he didn't go crazy offensively. He's been good, but some of the takes that this guy has, Dylan Cruz, I mean, it is ridiculous. This is a dude that's going to get to pro ball and probably run sub 20% chase rates immediately. With the speed, with the power, with the feel to hit. Dylan Cruz is a no-brainer, number 1. just because I would never take the arm one when I have someone like Cruz. But if someone takes Skenes, like, I get it. I get it.
Yeah. So my worry, I guess, is, and it's not really even a worry because I think it would be a good pick for the Pirates. Like, they can't go wrong with either of the LSU guys. I think the way that the Pirates go wrong at 1-1 is getting Max Clark underslotted.
Yeah, that would scream Mickey Moniak to me.
Yeah, I think that's just the objectively wrong decision.
Yeah.
If they take one of the two LSU guys, I don't think they're going wrong. I think that Cruz is a clear-cut one because he is a hitter, because he is so polished. But like Skenes is really polished too, man. The reason I could see Skenes happening is, okay, Keller looks good. Who else you got in this rotation moving forward? I would have said Roansy coming into this year, but Roansy Contreras has been relegated to the bullpen. Jared Jones looks fucking awesome in Indianapolis. Quinn Priester just punched out 11 in 6 shutout innings last night. But again, like, these are not tried and true big league guys. Like, you don't know what Quinn Priester is going to look like at the major league level. You don't know what Jones or Solomito is going to look like at the big league level. You have no idea how Bubba Chandler is going to develop. So if you have the opportunity to add arguably the best or the second best pitching prospect in baseball as soon as he's drafted, they could jump on that opportunity.
And that's the thing, is he is, the second he's drafted, I think, the best pitching prospect in baseball. I'm trying to think. I mean, Yuri's graduated. It would be him versus Painter, and dependent on Painter's health, I would probably take Painter over him. I think there's a whole conversation we'll probably have as we get closer to the draft, which is, and hopefully if I can get a little bit more data and information on the fastball shape, because there is a little bit of discussion about that. Is it that high carry, high IVB fastball? Like, probably not. You can even tell by the way it moves, but the velocity is so strong, and he can use that at the bottom of the zone and get whiffs. He could probably go to a variation with a four-seamer, a more true four-seamer, and get whiffs at the top. I'm sure that whoever drafts him, they'll tweak it a little bit. But also, as we talked about with Walker Buehler on the Just Baseball show, you don't want to mess around with the guys that are pretty complete products and look really good, that you took number 1 or 2 overall to be them. So maybe they don't. Maybe they see how this works. And at the end of the day, 98 to 101, even if it's a little bit flatter, I think his fastball is less of the straight arrow of Hunter Greene and a little bit more of the drop. So we'll see, but I'm really interested to see how that translates. Regardless, there's 1 or 2 pitching prospects you take over Paul Skenes, and that's about it, if that. And I think Paul Skenes as number 1 as a pitching prospect is valid as well, and totally understandable.